The high priest Amenhotep's scream tore through the limestone corridors of the Temple of Wajet like a blade through papyrus. Servants rushed toward the inner sanctum, their bare feet slapping against stones still cool from the night. What they found stopped them cold at the threshold. 12 cobras circled the priest where he lay sprawled on the floor, their hoods flared, bodies weaving in a dance older than the pyramids themselves. At the center of this living wreath of death stood a boy of perhaps 7 floods, his small fists clenched, his face twisted in fury. The serpent-shaped birthmark on his bare chest, the mark that had troubled the temple astrologer since his birth, seemed to pulse with a dark internal light. "Kenti didn't steal from the offerings," the boy shouted, his voice breaking. "You lied! You always lie!" The high priest's lips moved in prayer, but no sound emerged. One cobra had already struck his shoulder. Purple-black venom stained his white linen robes, his eyes wide with terror and something else, perhaps recognition or ancient memory, fixed on the child. "The prophecy," Amenhotep whispered, blood trickling from his mouth. "Apep's blood walks again." A woman burst through the crowd, Neferet, a temple weaver, her face carved from desperation. She grabbed the boy, pulling him back, and the moment her hands touched his shoulders, the serpents vanished. Not slithered away, vanished, as if they had been smoke all along, or something worse than smoke, manifestations of fury given scales and venom. The high priest collapsed fully, his breath rattling. Servants rushed to him, but he pushed them away with trembling hands, pointing at the child. "The child cannot remain in Thebes. He is marked by the chaos serpent. When Ra's chosen enemy flows through mortal veins, kingdoms burn." Young Kenti looked at his mother, then at his hands, confusion replacing rage. "Mother, what did I do? Where did the snakes come from?" Neferet pulled him close, but her eyes met those of the high priest. Both knew this moment had been building since the night 7 years ago, when the child emerged from her womb during a violent sandstorm, lightning splitting the sky though no rain fell, and the mark of the serpent already dark upon his newborn chest. "You called them my son, and now we must run." They fled Thebes before dawn, when the ferryman's eyes were still clouded with sleep and date wine. Neferet traded her copper bracelet, her marriage gift from Kenti's father, dead these 3 years, for passage across the Nile. The great river flowed dark and viscous as honey in the pre-dawn gloom, and Kenti watched the temple's white columns shrink behind them, wondering if he would ever see the city again. "Why did they come, Mother?" he asked for the 3rd time, examining his palms as if the answer might be written there in lines only children could read. Neferet adjusted the bundle of their belongings, 2 loaves of barley bread, a water skin, a change of linen, and the small wooden amulet of Taweret she had worn through her pregnancy. "I don't know, little serpent. Your father—" She stopped, swallowed. "Your father could never explain either." Kenti's head snapped up. "Father could do this too?" The ferryman glanced at them sharply, and Neferet fell silent, but her nod was answer enough. They disembarked on the western bank, land of the dead, where most living souls traveled only to bury their departed. Here tombs honeycombed the cliffs, and the air tasted of natron and myrrh. For 3 days they walked north through villages too small to have names, sleeping in abandoned granaries, accepting bread from farmers who asked no questions. Neferet worked where she could, weaving, grinding grain, helping birth a difficult calf, and always moved on before comfort became familiarity. Kenti learned to recognize the look adults gave him when they noticed the mark on his chest, a mixture of fear and fascination, like men watching a crocodile sun itself on a riverbank. On the fourth day, they reached the village of Pa Sobek, a collection of mud brick houses clustered around a small temple to the crocodile god. The village elder, an ancient woman named Merititis, whose spine curved like a sickle, studied Kenti with eyes that missed nothing. "The boy has the old blood," she said, not asking. "He needs training, control." "Control?" Merititis laughed, a sound like wind through dried reeds. "Child, the serpent's gift is not a tool to be mastered like weaving or pottery. It is chaos itself, the force that existed before Ma'at brought order to the cosmos. You might as well try to control the Nile's flood." "Then he'll destroy himself," Neferit said. "Already he nearly killed a high priest." "Perhaps that priest deserved killing. He's 7 years old." Merititis regarded both of them for a long moment, then sighed. "There is one who might help. In the Red Land, 3 days' walk into the desert, lives a hermit, a former priest of Set, who abandoned the temples when he discovered his own abilities. He calls himself Senebtisi now, though that was not his birth name. If anyone can teach the boy to quiet the storm inside him, it is he." The desert was a god unto itself, older than Osiris, crueler than Set, more patient than eternity. Kenti and his mother walked through landscapes where the sun hammered the earth into submission, and wind-carved sandstone rose in fantastic shapes like frozen giants. They rationed water with the discipline of the desperate, and at night, wrapped in the single wool blanket Merititis had given them, they shivered beneath stars so numerous and bright they seemed close enough to touch. On the second day, Kenti asked the question that had been building since Thebes. "Mother, how did father die?" Neferit's jaw tightened. They walked another 100 paces before she answered. "He saved us. There was a fire in the temple storehouse, an accident or so they claimed. Your father was working there, hauling grain. When the flames grew wild, when other men fled, he stood at the doorway and called them." "Snakes?" "Snakes," she confirmed. "Hundreds of them, flowing from the desert like a river of scales. They formed a living barrier between the flames and the houses, kept the fire contained until it burned itself out. The grain was lost, but the village was saved." She paused. "But the effort, it consumed him. He collapsed that night, fever-mad, speaking in languages no one knew. By morning, he was gone." "Did people hate him?" "Some. Others built a small shrine to him, called him blessed by Wadjet. The priests," she shook her head, "the priests said he had trafficked with chaos. They would have cast his body outside the necropolis, but I bribed the embalmers with everything we had." Kenti touched the mark on his chest. "Is that what will happen to me?" Before Neferet could answer, a voice like grinding stone spoke from the shadow of a massive boulder ahead. "Only if you're foolish enough to let it." They had found Senebtisi. The hermit was not what Kenti expected. Ancient Egypt revered age, but this man seemed to exist beyond age entirely. His skin was burned almost black by decades of sun, his body lean as dried meat, his eyes the pale brown of sand in moonlight. He wore only a loincloth and a necklace of what Kenti first took for beads, but then recognized, with a chill, as snake vertebrae. "A child," Senebtisi said, studying Kenti with those unsettling eyes. "I haven't trained a child in 30 floods. The young ones usually die." "We had nowhere else to go," Neferet said. "Truth." The hermit smiled, revealing surprisingly good teeth. "The boy reeks of wild power. Can you call them now, child? The servants of Apep?" I don't know. It only happens when I'm angry." "Then I'll make you angry." Senebtisi moved faster than seemed possible for a man of his apparent years, striking Kenti across the face with an open palm. The boy stumbled back, tasting blood, shock and rage exploding through him, and felt the familiar surge, the sensation like his chest splitting open, like something ancient and hungry pouring out. "No," Senebtisi said quietly, one word loaded with such weight that the surge stopped. The hermit's hand rested on Kenti's chest, over the mark. "Feel it. The chaos wants to flow through you like water through a crack. You are not the water boy. You are the vessel. Learn to be stone, not pottery." For 6 months, Kenti lived in the desert with Senebtisi, while Neferet worked in Pasebek, visiting every 10th day with food and news of the world beyond the Red Land. The training was unlike anything the boy had imagined. Senebtisi did not teach him to summon serpents. Instead, he taught him to meditate under the murderous noon sun until the distinction between self and heat dissolved. He taught him to identify the 37 varieties of desert snakes, to handle them, to understand that they were not evil but merely alive, operating according to their ancient nature. He taught him the old stories, older than the pyramids, older than the first dynasty, from the time when gods walked the Black Land openly and chaos was not yet separated from order. "The mark you bear," Senebtisi explained one evening, as they sat by a small fire of dried tamarisk wood, "is not a curse, though priests name it so. Before the first pharaoh united the two lands, before Ma'at became the law of civilization, there were those who could command the powers of chaos, not for destruction, or not only for destruction, but for transformation. The serpent is the symbol of this power, because the serpent lives between worlds, earth and water, life and death, venom and healing." "But the high priest said I carry Apep's blood," Kenti said, "the enemy of Ra. Apep is chaos unbound. You are chaos channeled. There is a difference." Senebtisi poked the fire with a stick. "The priests fear what they cannot control. They have built a civilization on order, on Ma'at, on the yearly flood that comes when expected, and the sun that rises where it should. Your gift reminds them that beneath the order, chaos still writhes. It makes them uncomfortable. Did you kill someone? Is that why you're here?" The hermit was quiet for so long that Kenti thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I killed 7 priests of Amun in Memphis. They had condemned a woman to death for speaking against the temple's grain taxes. She was right. The priests were hoarding while farmers starved. I was young, idealistic, newly aware of my power. I called the serpents during the trial, thinking I would frighten the priests into justice." He smiled bitterly. "The serpents killed them instead. I fled to the desert, and I have been here 43 years. Do you regret it?" "Every day, and not at all." Senebtisi met his eyes. "That is the burden of our gift, boy. We can shape the world in ways others cannot. But chaos answers to no master perfectly. It will always demand more than you wish to give." The training intensified. Senebtisi would strike Kenti without warning, would insult his dead father, would destroy the boy's carefully built projects, anything to trigger rage. Each time, Kenti had to resist the call, had to feel the chaos rising, and then not reject it, not fight it, but acknowledge it and let it pass like a storm acknowledged but not entered. "You cannot kill the serpent in your blood," Senebtisi repeated constantly. "You can only learn to speak with it, to negotiate, to understand that you and it are one being with competing desires." One morning, Kenti awoke to find 3 scorpions on his chest. He lay utterly still, calling on 6 months of discipline, and when Senebtisi appeared, the old hermit actually smiled. "You're ready, or as ready as anyone can be."
When Kenti returned to Pas Sobek with his mother, he was taller, harder, marked by the desert in ways that went deeper than his sun-darkened skin. The villagers regarded him warily, and Meritides insisted he wear a chest wrap to hide the serpent mark in public. "No need to invite trouble," she said. But trouble, Kenti was learning, had a way of finding those marked by chaos, whether invited or not. He was 14 when the soldiers came. Not local militia, but genuine soldiers of Pharaoh's army, 50 men under the command of a captain named Kaimuaset, their leather armor dusty from travel, their bronze-tipped spears gleaming in the afternoon sun. They assembled the village in the square before the crocodile temple. "We seek a boy," Kaimuaset announced. His voice carried the accent of Thebes, nasal and precise. "Now a man, perhaps. Born with a serpent mark on his chest. He would be 14 floods of age. He killed a high priest 7 years ago, and the temples have not forgotten." Kenti's mother gripped his arm, but he gently removed her hand. 7 years of training had given him more than control of his gift. It had given him clarity. He could run again, drag his mother into another exile, another village, another desperate anonymity, or he could face what had been chasing him since birth. He stepped forward, unwrapping his chest. The gasps from the villagers were matched by the soldiers' instinctive retreat. Only Captain Kaimuaset held his ground, his eyes narrowing as he studied the mark. The cobra coiled in a perfect spiral, its head resting where Kenti's heart beat. "I am Kenti, son of Neferet and Bakht. I bear the mark you seek." "Then you will come to Thebes," Kaimuaset said. "The new high priest, Psamtik, wishes to meet you. You are not accused, not yet, but questions require answers, and the temples require assurance." "And if I refuse?" The captain's expression didn't change, but his hand moved to his Hopesh sword. "Then I have 50 men and orders to bring you regardless. It need not be pleasant." Senebtisi had taught Kenti to recognize the topology of power, when to stand, when to bend, when to break. This moment, with 50 spears and his entire village at risk, was not the time for defiance. "I will go willingly. My mother remains here, unharmed." "Agreed." Kaimuaset gestured, and 2 soldiers produced rope. "But you will be bound. The priests insist." The journey back to Thebes took 8 days. Kenti walked with his hands bound, surrounded by soldiers who would not meet his eyes. At night, they staked him to the ground like a dangerous animal. He did not resist, did not complain. He used the meditation techniques Senebtisi had taught him, turning inward, communing with the chaos in his blood. It whispered constantly now, eager, hungry. "Break the ropes, call us, we will tear them apart." "No," he told it, "not yet. Not unless there is no other way."
Thebes had grown larger in 7 years, or perhaps Kenti had simply grown smaller. The avenue of sphinxes leading to the great temple of Amun-Ra seemed to stretch forever, and the pylons rose like mountains made of stone and human ambition. The city smelled of incense, beer, baking bread, human waste, and the peculiar metallic tang that came from thousands of bodies living in close proximity. They took him not to the high priest's chambers, but to an underground room deep beneath the temple complex, a place where the air was cool and stale, where limestone walls pressed close, where lamplight flickered against shadows that seemed hungry. 5 priests waited there, all elderly, all wearing the distinctive leopard skins that marked them as sem-priests, ritualists of the highest order. High Priest Psamtik stood at the center, flanked by 4 others whose names Kenti would never learn. Psamtik was younger than Amenhotep had been, perhaps 40 floods, with the calculating eyes of a merchant evaluating goods. "Remove his bonds," Psamtik ordered. When Kenti was freed, he rubbed his wrists and waited. Senebtisi had taught him the power of silence. "You killed my predecessor," Psamtik said, not a question. "The snakes killed him. I summoned them without meaning to. I was 7 years old and frightened. Yet you survived the encounter with your gift intact. Most who bear such marks die in childhood, consumed by the chaos they channel. You are an anomaly." Kenty said nothing. "The temples debate what to do with you," Psamtik continued. "Some say you should be executed as a servant of Apep, chaos made flesh. Others argue you should be enslaved to the state, used as a weapon against Egypt's enemies. Still others," he paused, "still others believe you are a test from the gods, a reminder that Ma'at is maintained not through its absence of chaos, but through the constant struggle to contain it." "What do you believe?" Kenty asked. Psamtik smiled thinly. "I believe the gods gave you this mark for a purpose. I also believe that purpose may be as much about teaching us as teaching you." He gestured, and one of the other priests brought forth a wooden box carved with protective hieroglyphics. Inside, wrapped in linen, was a bronze dagger so old its blade had turned green. "This knife," Psamtik said, "was used in the murder of Pharaoh Amenemhat I 300 years ago. The assassin was never caught, but the weapon was recovered. It is cursed. Anyone who touches it dies within a month, wasting away as if consumed by invisible serpents." He set it on the stone table between them. "Pick it up." Kenty understood immediately. This was a test and an execution combined. If he refused, they would kill him for cowardice or defiance. If he touched it and died, they would claim divine judgment. And if he somehow survived— He thought of his mother, of Senebsisi, of the 7 years spent negotiating with the chaos in his blood. He thought of his father, who had died protecting others. Then he reached out and grasped the dagger's hilt. The curse hit him like a physical blow, a wave of rage and malice and ancient hunger that came roaring up through the bronze and into his flesh. He felt serpents inside his veins, felt them coiling around his heart, felt venom that was not venom burning through him. And then he did what Senebtisi had taught him. He did not fight the chaos. He acknowledged it, welcomed it, let it flow through him like water through channels he had spent 7 years carving in the bedrock of his soul. "You are old," he told the curse silently. "You are angry. Someone bound you to this blade and trapped you for centuries. I feel your pain." The curse hesitated, as if surprised to be addressed rather than resisted. "I will free you," Kenty continued, "but you must leave peacefully. No more deaths. Your task is finished." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dagger grew warm in his hand, and some presence that had inhabited the metal for 3 centuries, simply left. The blade cooled. The curse was gone. Kenty set the dagger down. The priests stared at him in shock. "How?" one of them whispered. "Chaos recognizes chaos," Kenty said simply. The curse was lonely.
Psamtik dismissed the other priests with a gesture. When he and Kenty were alone, the high priest's careful mask slipped, revealing something raw beneath. Fear, yes, but also a desperate kind of hope. "The Nubians are moving north," he said, without preamble. "A warlord named Alara has united the southern tribes. Within 2 years, perhaps less, he will attack Egypt. Pharaoh's armies are strong, but Alara has something we do not, a priestess who commands scorpions, thousands of them. She rides at the head of his army, and men die screaming before Egyptian soldiers can even engage. You want me to fight her, Kenty said. I want you to save Egypt. The Nubians will not stop with the border forts. They will take Thebes, Memphis, eventually the Delta itself. This is not politics, boy. This is survival. Kenty looked at the ancient dagger on the table, still marked with the ghost of its curse. And if I refuse, then I will let you go. I am not my predecessor. I do not kill out of fear. Psamtik's voice softened. But I am asking you, Kenty, son of Bakht, bearer of the serpent's mark, will you let Egypt burn because the priests once wronged you, or will you accept that power carries obligation? It was the question Senebtisi had warned him would come eventually, the question that had no clean answer. Kenty thought of his father, who had called the serpent to save a village and died for it. He thought of his mother, weaving in Pasobek, always looking over her shoulder. He thought of Senebtisi in his desert exile, neither content nor entirely regretful. I will do it, he said finally, but on conditions. My mother is given a house in Thebes, with servants and income for life. The hermit Senebtisi is pardoned for whatever crimes the temples claim against him. And I am not a slave or soldier. I am a free citizen, serving Egypt because I choose to, not because you command it. Agreed. One more thing. Kenty met the high priest's eyes. When this war is over, you will gather the scholars and priests. We will study this gift, this mark, not as a curse, but as a phenomenon to be understood. There are others like me, I know it. My father was one. The Nubian priestess is another. We should not be driven to exile or turned into weapons. We should be taught, guided, integrated into the order you claim to serve. For a long moment, Psamtik said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. You negotiate like a merchant. Very well. If you save Egypt, I will give you what you ask. But the war comes soon, Kenty. Are you ready? Kenty touched the mark on his chest, feeling the familiar pulse of chaos beneath his palm. He closed his eyes, reaching into the part of himself he had spent 7 years learning to control, and spoke to the chaos in his blood. It's time, he said. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with serpents, hundreds at first, then thousands, materializing from air and stone and the desert itself. They fell like rain, a writhing storm of scales and fangs, and as they hit the ground, they surged forward to meet the scorpion tide. The Nubian priestess looked up, and for just a moment, across 100 yards of sand and chaos, her eyes met Kenty's. In that moment, she knew what he was. He knew what she was. And both of them understood that this war would not be decided by pharaoh or warlord, by strategy or numbers, but by something older and stranger, by those who walked between order and chaos, who carried the ancient powers in their blood, who were neither fully human nor fully divine, but something the gods themselves had not fully intended. The serpents met the scorpions, and the battle began. But Kenty was smiling, because for the first time in his life, he was not running, he was not hiding. He was standing in the sun with his mark visible for all to see, using his gift not in rage or fear, but in purpose. And whether he lived or died in the coming days, he was finally, completely, irrevocably free. The serpent in his blood coiled contentedly and whispered a single word: home.